So I wanted to give you just a general look at some weather plots here. Begin to introduce you to meteorology. Meteorology is just the study of weather. That's what it's called. So right now I have in front of you a visible satellite image. All right, this satellite is sitting up there at about 23,000 miles above the Earth. Its camera's got resolution a half mile or less. So what you're seeing is some nice little details of clouds. So I wanted you to notice a couple things. We're going to talk satellite a lot more over the course of the course. So look at the Great Lakes. There's hardly any clouds over the Great Lakes itself, but notice a little lot. Indiana, Ohio, Pennsylvania, West Virginia, Kentucky. Those dots are little tiny outside. If you were under that, looked outside right now, you would see a lot of little tiny cumulus clouds. Now you'll notice the clouds are rotating. If you were to look at over Maine, you would have Maine coming from the north to the west of Maine. So one of the things you're going to learn this week is that low pressure systems, the wind flows counterclockwise. So if it flows counterclockwise, then that must be a low pressure system because the winds are coming up from the south to the east of it, down from the north to the west of it. That is a counter. So we've just discovered a low pressure system. Also, notice the little bubbles down over Florida. Also, you can actually see a shadow behind them. The sun's a little bit to the south of them, and it's casting a shadow to the north. Those are thunderstorms. Actually casting a shadow. If you were north of those clouds, rain on you, you'd be getting a shadow from the sun because of the cloud height. So it's interesting, yeah, you can pick up all these little things out of just looking at one satellite picture. That's all we're doing here. We're trying to determine what it's like right now. We have a mass of clouds in the Midwest coming down. Thunderstorms we're seeing over Florida, off the coast. Notice that Lake Michigan, all the clouds, little bubbly clouds around it, there's nothing over the lake. Interesting. Maybe there's something we'll think about for future reference here. Why is that? So this is just one satellite picture. So let's look at the current radar. So this is those thunderstorms that we saw down over Florida. You can see the light green to the darker green to the reds and orange colors, warmer colors. The more intense the precipitation is, it can go all the way to white. So those are the more intense thunderstorms, the heavier rain. The more the color goes into the red shades, the heavier the rain is going to be. So there's some pretty good thunderstorms across the central part of Florida here. Again, this is all through an instrument. Believe it or not, there's one in Melbourne, Florida. There's one outside of Tampa. But they are radar. They're showing what's happening from a distance. So now that we've looked at that, the last thing I wanted to do was show you what the local weather map looked like. All this is, think about it. Every station that has an observation. What's an observation? I walked outside and I looked at the weather. I wanted to know what the weather is right now. So that's an observation. So all of them have to be at the same time. Weather is always changing. It's never constant. It just doesn't stay that way. So it's always some kind of change. So if I want to know what the weather is, in this case at 11 a.m. this morning, what do I need to do? I need to all observations at 11 a.m. Eastern time is not 11 a.m. in California. That would be 3 hours difference. So California's time would be 8 a.m. But they took an 8 a.m. observation that was equivalent to my 11 a.m. And in between the various times as well, all of us are at exactly the same moment in time. What do we see? Well, we talked about there being a low pressure system up here. Well, there it is. Just northeast of Maine, there's a low. And we have other things. We have change of air masses. Air masses are large bodies of air that all are very similar. In other words, the temperatures, the relative humidity or amount of moisture in the air, pretty similar over the large air mass. So I have an air mass here coming down from Canada. Well, what's in Canada? It's cold, for one thing, dry. So two factors with this air mass. Most of this air mass is going to be cool, and it's going to be dry. Now, in wintertime, that could be very cold because Canada is much colder in winter than summer. But right now, it's coming out of Canada. Canada's starting to cool off. So it's a relatively cool air mass. Temperatures up in here in the 50s. So that is pushing southeast into our area. That's an air mass. There's also an air mass off the southeast United States coast. There's another system out there. In that part of the ocean, the southeast, off the southeast United States, the ocean is fairly warm. So if that air mass is going to be a warm air mass and quite moist. So different air mass. So the separation between these air masses is what we call a front. Now, that front can be stationary, it could be warm, it could be cold. And there's also an occluded front, but we'll get into those some more later. Let's just look at simple here. So we have the air mass centered over the Great Lakes right now is pushing southeast. Notice the blue line and the little triangles out ahead of it. That's the direction of motion. Those triangles point the direction the front is moving. So that front is moving towards the east and southeast. It's pushing cold air in there. So that front is literally, as it's moving along, making the air cooler and drier. Because the air mass is going from the nice, hot, humid air mass we've had to a more cool, drier air mass. Now, out to the west, let's look right along the Rockies, just right there. Air is pretty warm and dry, actually, to the west of that. But it's quite warm. Temperatures in the 80s, even 90s. So that air mass is trying to come in and take the place of where the cool air mass has been. So again, low pressure, we have counterclockwise flow. High pressure, we have clockwise flow. Well, what does that mean? Well, that means in the Midwest, the air is coming out of the south. And to the east of that, the air is coming out of the north. So if I'm coming out of the south, I'm bringing in warmer temperatures probably. So we have a warm front right along West Texas, western part of Kansas there. Warmer air to the west, cooler air to the east. That warm front is advancing slowly, but it is advancing. That's why you have red and you have semicircles. So that warm air is moving to the east. So now we've just talked about two types of fronts, cold fronts, warm fronts. We have another one here below that across Texas and down into the Gulf of Mexico there. You'll see on one side you have a triangle in blue. On the other side you have red and a semicircle. What that means is that front's not going anywhere. It's a stationary front. It's not moving. So neither cold air or warm air are advancing. So that gives you our first picture of what's going on here. So let's take a quick peek in this. I wanted to show you this a second because I want to get to right in here. I wanted to show you the fronts. We talked about fronts. So warm front. Warm air advancing, cool air bound below, lots of clouds ahead of it, and warm fronts will get warmer above you before they get warmer at where you are. Cold fronts, on the other hand, very steep, a lot more thunderstorms with the cold front, more stratiform clouds. And we're going to talk about in this chapter the different kinds of clouds. I love to look at clouds, and that is one of the things you'll discuss in this chapter as well. So, but I wanted you to show you that there is a slope. Here is the other aspect of weather. It's three-dimensional. It's not, oh, I'm at the ground, that's all I need to worry about. You need to worry about what is going on in the atmosphere above you. We live in the atmosphere in the troposphere. That is the area where all weather takes place. So, again, this gives you just a quick introduction of what's going on in the weather. So I hope you got a little bit out of that. Now, let me know if you have any questions with